In addition to the areas that are important for you, those 6 priorities that we wrote down, there are also some other areas of your budget that you should have something allocated to, whether it's important to you or not. Every budget needs to cover these 8 categories. Some of your priorities may or may not fall into these 8, and a budget can obviously have way more than these, but this is the most basic version, so build on it as you'd like. We're going to be building this budget out for a single person earning $35,000 a year, or about $17.50 an hour. First category would be taxes. If you're a traditional employee, which means you receive a W-2 at the end of the year, then 99% of the time your employer will take your taxes out of your paycheck before you ever see it. So this is easy for most people. However, if you're a freelancer, a contractor, gig worker, or hustling on the side, you're responsible for setting aside money for the tax man yourself. For most people earning less than $40,000 a year, you should set aside about 12%. And if you make between $40,000 and $85,000, then you should budget about 22%. Those numbers are for the federal tax rate here in the US. Some states also have a state income tax, so do a quick Google search and find out if this applies to you, and if so, how much. The second category would be generosity and charitable giving. I think 10% is a good starting goal for generosity. You can always go up from there, but it's important to start, even when you're broke. What we notice about people is that we always assume we'll be more generous in the future when we're making or earning more. But the truth is 10% is always 10%. And if you can't give away 10 when you're making 100, you won't be able to give away 10,000 when you're making 100,000. So build the habit and the lifestyle of generosity now. Number 3 is savings and investment at about 15%. Savings is important because there are big purchases and expenses in your future that you don't want to have to go into debt for. And it's important to also invest some of your savings because you'll never be able to save your way to wealthy. Wealth is built when your money makes more money. We'll go into this one a lot more in the future lessons, but this will include a short-term savings, a rainy day fund, long-term savings, and a retirement. Next up is housing. Your rent should be less than 30% of your budget. 20% would be ideal, but depending on where you live, that gets really difficult. In addition to rent, you also have to factor in things like utilities, electric, water, trash, gas, and the internet. Next category is food at about 10%. That doesn't go very far if you're wanting to eat steak and organic produce, but fortunately there are some inexpensive ways to eat mostly healthy on a budget. We'll get to cover that in a future lesson as well. Next up, transportation, about 10% of your monthly budget. Now keep in mind that that's not just the payment on your vehicle, but also the title, the plates, the insurance, gas, tires, maintenance, and repair. Next up is lifestyle at about 5%. This includes going out, bars, restaurants, shopping, new toys, hobbies, and things like that. And then lastly, an oops category at about 5%. It seems like there's always something that pops up. And instead of trying to play catch up after each unforeseen expense, let's plan ahead for the unseen. So things like a speeding ticket, ER visit, or if someone asks you to be in their wedding and now you need to rent a tux, it all adds up. Again, these are standard figures for a basic budget, but depending on what your priorities are, you may want to increase or decrease the various amounts. So now it's your turn to build out your budget. But remember, you aren't building a budget to justify what you're spending. Instead, we're building a budget based on our priorities and our passions, and then we're telling our spending to line up with our budget. So your spending should follow the guidelines of your budget, not determine them. Here's the easy steps to do this. First, determine how much money you make in a month. Then, multiply it by the percentage in each of these 8 budget categories. Now make sure that your budgeted expenses don't add up to more than your income. Next, begin to adjust based on your top 6 priorities from the last lesson. Perhaps you want to take some money out of transportation and food and move it into lifestyle. It's your budget. Do what you want. Lastly, double check your math again and make sure that everything added together is less than or equal to your monthly income. Now you could do all of this with pen and paper, or you could do it in a spreadsheet, or you could use an app. The important part is just that you do it. So let's get started.